Hey there, viewers. Welcome back to the Self-Made Auto Channel. So today is our second SMA A.M.A. Ask Me Anything. Got quite a little chat going on over here where you guys are waiting, and I was eating my Lucky Charms. I had to miss some lunch today, so I had to catch up. And what's more nutritious than a bowl of Lucky Charms, right? Before we get started, I want to make sure that we get a microphone check 1, 2, make sure that the audio and video is as good as it gets for what we have to work with here. So I'll wait, running about a 14-second delay, what I've determined. So I want to make sure that, and it wasn't sounding real great on my end. I was getting a lot of weird, crazy feedback. So I want to make sure that that's all good before we get started here. All right, looks like we're getting some 10-4s and some thumbs ups here. So everything must be good. Before we begin with A.M.A, the questions are not limited to automotive type questions. It can be anything within reason, I suppose. I am not an automotive guru. So if you come here looking for silver bullets, I don't have any. I'm limited in my experience as far as what I've seen. You guys know that I mostly work on Asian and domestic, very few European cars. And I tend not to remember what I can look up. So if you're looking for something really specific, it may be difficult for me to answer. Of course, I'll do my best. And if I don't know, I'll tell you, I don't know. So we'll open it to the floor. I think we have about 500 people watching currently. So we'll see what scans across the chat here. I tried to put it in slow chat mode, so we'll see how that works today. They usually get pretty zippy zap as they're blazing across here. Let's see what we got. Nope, I must have missed one already because Keith's already told me. So Keith's in there moderating the folks. Let's see. Let's see. How did I get started in the business? So Ken Bergeron, I'm just going to say the first initial of your last name. It's Ken B. He asked, how did I get started in the business? Actually, Ken, I was working for my dad when I got out of school in 1999. And it was always my dream to have my own shop because you never want to work with your family, you know, always that old story. But at any rate, I always wanted my own shop, always enjoyed working on cars. Working in his shop, you know, I worked on big trucks and heavy equipment also, which I hated. I didn't really hate it. It's just I'm not built for it. You know, little pea shooters couldn't handle the big stuff. Plus, it just whips you. So this was originally my dad's shop. He bought this back when I was 1 year old, just a little lad, and then he built a bigger shop, an 80 by 130 that he works out of, that my brother currently owns. But I guess to get back to the original question, I just purchased it from my parents and then started my business. Let's see. This guy doesn't have first and last name. It says Jess Up Graham. He says, where can I get training on the Vantage Pro? I don't know the answer to that. I don't know if Scanner Danner has that on his premium channel. Perhaps maybe email him. I don't know of any others on YouTube that have a specific training on it. I believe it has inside the Vantage Pro, if it's anything like the old Vantage, it had some 10 and 15 minute courses. I assume you're talking about just the basic usage of the tool, which is actually pretty, I mean, they're pretty straightforward, how they're supposed to be used in the component test meter portion of it and all that stuff. So, maybe check with Danner to see if he did anything on that, or maybe perhaps on the original Vantage, but it's really not an overly difficult tool to use because it kind of directs you through everything, unless you're looking for just basic scope usage. That it's a totally different thing. Let's see. Bullet Bob writes, are any snap-on test lights worth the money? Good question, Bob. Test lights are always worth their money. I do like my incandescent test lights, and I actually have one snap-on test light that I like in particular. It's actually the only snap-on one I have. I'll get it out. Which is this little fella right here. Not sure if I've had this in any videos, and I don't even know. I believe this is probably the part number. It's probably not, yeah, maybe that'll focus. EECT, what is it, 313A. So what I like about this test light is it is incandescent. Of course, I need to drill out the shaft on it so I can put a different bulb in it. This only draws like 100 milliamps. But what I like about this one is it has banana jacks on both ends, so you can use, you know, any type of female banana jack adapter that you want. So if you're trying to front probe a connector, you know, you can put various, you know, front probes on it, and then, you know, whatever you want to stick on this end. I think I did have this in the video. I want to say it was on Chevy 3500 dually. We were fixing something to do with the transmission in it, if I remember right. So yeah, and Mark from Solid Diagnostics, another channel moderator, he just said that I did have this in the video. So I do like this one from Snap-on. I do not believe they make it anymore. I think the only way they make it is in an LED, which is pointless. You might better not even own it at that point, in my opinion. I believe that's what the Snap-on guy told me when he found me this one. But you want a good test light, go to Harbor Freight. Can't beat them. Let's see. Phil Scar, he writes, for someone that owns their own shop, and when you're doing extensive troubleshooting, do you still charge by the hour for every hour that you have involved? So we've talked about this a little bit before, Phil. Typically what I do is I have a 1 hour minimum or 1 hour fee, you know, if you come in, and I assume you're talking about diagnostics, like check engine light comes in, check engine lights on. So I have a 1 hour fee. 90% of your engine lights or, you know, drivability complaints you can figure out within that 1 hour. If it ends up being, you know, you bring it in, multiple codes that don't pertain to each other, you know, say you have an EVAP code and you have a, you know, misfire code or a transmission code, you know, something completely unrelated, two separate issues, you know, that there is not all going to fit under the 1 hour typically. So it's, I guess it goes on a case by case basis, if that makes sense. But typically it's an hour. If you get into it and you diagnose it and say, you know, you found that it's a, you know, bad, you know, broken wire, you know, it's an open circuit, that's where you stop, call a customer, say, you know, you diagnosed it. Yeah, it's an open circuit, it's a broken wire. We need to, you know, you can either do, you know, an overlay at that point if they choose to do so, or you may need more time to go find that broken wire. But yeah, it's more of a case by case, I guess it would be. Rick asks if I have any funny nightmare stories working on Volkswagen Audi you could share. Actually, Rick, my hatred for Volkswagen Audi started, of course, by working on one. There was an Audi, I don't know what I believe it was an A4. It was, you know, all-wheel drive, and I was putting a clutch in it, and it was shortly after I began my journey in the automotive industry, and it was a friggin' disaster. That just like set in my mind, you know, it's like I had like 30 bell housing bolts, and it was just, I ended up getting it together and pinched one of the wires for the starter and the bell housing, and had to disassemble most of it to do that. But like I said, I was young, bad temper, and just really have found a strong dislike for those cars ever since. Let's see. VW Renchi says that Volkswagen Audi is a nightmare. Only the air-cooled ones are worthy. At least you never have a radiator leak. I do know that. Oops. Many things are zipping by here. A.M.A. Grabowski writes, '03 Chevy Trailblazer EXT V8 wheel alignment issues. Firestone says they can't do an alignment because cam casters are as far as they will go. What do you do when the kits, what do you do, or what can we do? Are there kits to widen the cam and caster? So I assume for some reason they're not able to achieve, spec, which I find hard to believe, that they can't get the, the camber and the caster in using the cam bolts on the vehicle, because as long as the vehicle hasn't been modified, lowered or raised in any way, there is, ample adjustment for caster and camber. So short of seeing that vehicle, I wouldn't know what they're doing if they're doing something wrong, just make an assumption. I've done lots of wheel alignments on that style front end with the cam bolts. And I mean, they give you a lot of adjustment. So, I don't know if the vehicle's been modified or not, in which case, then you start seeing some issues, or if this, boy, you'd have to have some really, really saggy springs to, get outside of its adjustable range. So Alvaro M, he writes, why do my wheels spin with the front end jacked up in the tranny in neutral? It's a standard transmission, 98 Hyundai Elantra. So even with the transmission in neutral, there's still going to be friction in the moving parts. Your clutch is out, the input shaft is spinning. Just even with the thickness of the oil, perhaps, you're doing this when the engine's cold, which, you see all the time. You leave them in neutral, you have them running on a lift, the wheels are going to spin just simply from friction. Typically, you won't see that as the vehicle warms up, but it's certainly nothing to be alarmed about by any means. So Jonathan Pounds writes, please do a video, do an episode on a passenger hub assembly on a GMC Sierra. I believe, Jonathan, I should have several of those videos. All your GMs are pretty standard, 3 or 4 bolts and, beat the hub out. I do believe I do have videos on Sierras or, Silverados for wheel bearings, driver side, passenger side, it's all the same. Let's see. Nissan CVTs, how bad do they suck? Well, they don't suck if you're the shop owner, because you get to change them repeatedly. Let's see. Jeff P, he writes, I'm diagnosing an O2 Town and Country for fuel pump issues. I've traced it from the IPM now. I have been trying to figure out the pinouts for IPM plus front control module. Where can I find a pinout? So we use, Jeff, here in the shop, we use Mitchell On Demand, and we also use Identifix, which, both have pinouts. If you're looking for a DIY, you can check BBB Industries. I don't know, I doubt they have pinouts. Perhaps they'll have the wiring diagrams with the pinout numbers on them. You can also, I believe All Data has a DIY that you can subscribe to, and I believe Mitchell has a DIY version that you could subscribe to. You may have to pay the, $20 or $30 per vehicle. It's, it's worth it in my opinion if you're attempting to work on your vehicles yourself. You have to have information, just like we say in a lot of videos, you have to know your enemy. So if you don't have the wiring diagrams and the pinouts, you could be kind of pulling your hair out there. Oh, let's see. Aaron Rogers, he writes, what's a safe way to find a short in the SRS system? So he's talking about your airbags. All manuals say do not diagnose. Ford Expedition, forgot the year. Thank you for the great videos. if I was chasing down a short errand, regardless of what system it was in, I would just do it like I would any system, you know. So for example, let's say you're blowing a fuse, put the fuse in, it blows the fuse. I would look at a wire diagram. I would see where that fuse feeds. You know, typically I would, pull it, if it was a dead short, I'd pull the fuse out. I'd stick a, light bulb across it and use my current clamp and trace the current and see where it goes, see what device is shorted, or, which leg, if it's a multiple leg circuit, I'd find out which leg my 250 milliamps is going down, and then I would chase it that way. Let's see, I think maybe Keith is. He says slow chat is not turned on. I thought I turned it on. I'm sorry, Keith. I thought I set on a 30-second delay. Let's see. Jimmy Fernandez writes, I have an 02 Civic, represent Civic driver myself. My car is leaking oil from a small 1-inch cylinder device near the head on the right side. It has a gasket, but I don't know what the device is called. So Jimmy, you're going to want to go to the parts store and get I always call them cam plugs. They come in the headsets. You can buy them separate. I believe that I always call them cam plugs. I don't know the particular name. So the OEM one is plastic with 3 little fingers on it and an O-ring, and they just snap into the end of the head. Some of the aftermarket ones are all rubber with like 2 lips on them. They're a little bit trickier to get in. They seal quite well. You can use either design. If you're careful, you can get the OEM plastic one out. If you don't break any of the tabs off it, you can either, do what you want to do. You can take some black, RTV silicone, clean it up real good, smear a little on it, snap it back in. They will make a mess. They leak down. They drip all over the transmission. It's kind of a pisser to get to back behind that EGR valve, but certainly it's fixable. It's not too big a deal. Pretty cheap part. Let's see. Oh, there we go. Slow down. Slow down. Nope. That's staying. All right, give me just a minute. We're going to wait for the. Kenneth White, he writes, what is the best coolant to use on a Dexcool car? I have a 99 Cadillac DeVille d'Elegance, and I want to change the coolant. Honestly, Kenneth, in my opinion, I've always swapped, Dexcool for Dexcool. If it's being done during normal service intervals, I've never really seen a huge issue with it. Granted, it is, said that it is designed to eat plastic. Without looking at the chemistry of it, I've seen tons of my customers swap them from Dexcool to regular green glycol antifreeze. I would want to make sure that all the, components on your car are compatible with it. Of course, that increases your service intervals or decreases your service intervals. Whereas Dexcool is, I don't know, what, 5 years or whatever. It's a pretty touchy subject to start talking about Dexcool, but I've seen customers who change it, when it's supposed to be changed, and haven't had any issues with it, to speak of. So, no, that's Mrs. O. Wants to know if I want some soup. She doesn't know I had me Lucky Charms. Let's see. $10 question from Custom Honda. How do you handle customers or random people calling for random information and tool loaning? So you got a few things here. How do I handle customers or random people calling for random information? So that has actually started to become somewhat of a problem, I would say. Obviously with having 25 million views on YouTube and however many subscribers we have, people have a tendency to call. Running a full-time shop by myself, I just can't take the phone calls. The repair shop here is my first business. This is what I have to do. This is what, feeds my family and, pays my taxes. So if I had to stop to take the phone calls from, every YouTuber that called, I would never get anything done all day, period. I would just be on the phone and, giving out advice. Hence the A.M.A. on Wednesdays. As long as I can continue these, that's what I try to do to help feed that a little bit. As far as loaning out tools, I do loan out tools. Some people will stop in. I mean, I had some people stop in the other day. Actually, I just had a guy had a flat tire out here yesterday or this morning on his mail truck. He wanted to know if he could borrow my jack. So I gave him a jack, a cordless impact, and socket. He went over and changed the tire. But depending on who it is, I loan out the tools, no sweat. Let's see. Don't forget the kids. Don't worry, Mrs. O. So that's my thought on that. Talking to people who call from YouTube is difficult, and I just can't. There's just not enough time in the day to do my work. So, but as far as tool loaning, you get your name down on the whiteboard. I let you borrow a tool. A.M.A writes, thanks for the Tundra brake job video. Saved me much time from test fitting. Well, that's good. Appreciate that. Thank you for the super chat. Get back to the questions here. Mike Mayfield wants to know if my dogs are girls, and yes, they're both female. Dennis Winchell writes, I have an 03 Avalanche. It's blowing black smoke while idles and hesitates. Has a 5.3 in it. All gaskets are new, and I did a motor swap, and the engine light is flashing. Well, Dennis, it sounds to me, I mean, if it's black smoking, it's likely running excessively rich. And with the engine light flashing, either when you swap the engine, you did not do a crankshaft relearn, which would have to be done, or you have, a severe misfire. So you definitely should have that checked out. But with the information you provided, that's what it sounds like to me. Let's see. Would I work on a truck if you flew me to Georgia? I've never been on a plane, so good luck. Let's see. Richard 440 writes, all data, Identifix or Mitchell? Yes, I use Identifix and Mitchell. I've never used I have used all data when I go and visit Keith. He uses all data. So, but yeah, Identifix and Mitchell are what I use here. Alvaro Morals writes, would changing a car from an automatic to manual shift damage the engine in any way? Just did that on my 98 Elantra. That's a good question. So, switching from an automatic to a manual, typically most engines you can do that with, assuming the crankshaft has a provision for the pilot bearing to be inserted. I would want to do some research to see if there's any different thrust bearings, crankshaft thrust bearings in a, automatic versus a manual engine. This is all assuming the transmission bolts up just fine, because, installing a clutch, you do have that push on the back of the crankshaft every time you push that clutch pedal down. Sometimes some engines have different, crank thrust bearings, perhaps. The other thing you have to keep in mind too on timing belt engines is, some engines that are timing belt driven will actually have like a metal guard on the timing belt. So if the vehicle's left in gear and it's actually, your car shut off, it's left in gear, you park it on a hill, it's actually, turning the engine backwards, the opposite way that it goes, and can actually relieve the belt tensioner over time. So your timing belt tensioner, some manual shift timing belt driven engines will actually have a guard on the timing belt to keep it from popping off the crank and, skipping the tooth. One that comes to mind offhand is Subaru, the Subaru manual, Subaru, like the EJ25 engine that is in a standard transmission always has that metal guard. You have to, measure it with feeler gauges to get the right height on it. Whereas the automatics don't, because there's no fear of the engine, spinning backwards or holding torque on it backwards to back off the timing belt. So the 98 Elantra, I'm not familiar with it to know if that's the case. So VW Renchi, he writes, is there recommended change intervals for GM oxygen sensors or no? So that's a good question. As far as just servicing them out of normal maintenance, I never have. Typically they'll, fail before that. I would say the best way to tell if your O2 sensor is perhaps on its way out, it would be to look in your mode 6 data to look at its lean to rich switch times, see what the max value is, see how close you're nearing that, and maybe make an assumption based on that. I may be wrong, but as far as just changing them just because, or changing them at a given mileage, that can be pretty spendy, particularly if you're talking like a V8 GM, where you've got 4 O2 sensors, you're talking dumping $500 on it, perhaps for no reasonable gain in, economy or performance. Let's see. Robert Davis writes, does Motorcraft make a battery or does it contract other manufacturers? That I don't know. That's a good question. If I remember correctly, there's not too many battery manufacturers in the U.S. There's, I think Exide has their own, and Johnson Controls, who makes like Interstate, Autocraft, and make a lot of them for the parts stores. I'm not 100% sure on that. You would actually have to research and see, who makes them if they're not made, in-house. Let's see. Steve's Auto and Truck wants to know if I hunt small game. I do. I love duck hunting and, small game hunting in general. Rabbits. My boys love to go squirrel hunting, so. Joe Bova says left-handed or right-handed screwdrivers. We actually use all metric screwdrivers here. Cardone Industries with the $5 refund. I'm pretty sure that's a spoof account. Blazer O2LS writes that Motorcraft is Johnson or Penn, depending. Yeah, so Penn being the other builder, depending on which battery. So, do I own an AR-15? I don't. I actually only own hunting rifles. I've never thought the AR-15 is much useful. Perhaps varmint hunting, something like that. Let's see. Jeff Chapel writes, do I own any Jeeps? I do. I have a 98 Grand Cherokee. That's my woods beater at home. It's not on the road or anything. It's just one we use for a four-wheeler. Let's see. Oh, Keith says, you don't have to super chat me, Keith. You can just text me, buddy. Oz Mechanics has a very good question. Well, let me just scroll up, see if I can find Oz here. It's probably a trick question. Keith's getting involved. Crap, I don't see it. Go ahead and post it again, Oz. I'll see if I can catch it zipping across this chat here. In the meantime, how old are the dogs? Like 4 and 2, somewhere around there. I know you paid $2 here and answer, Keith, but I'm waiting for it. Are you talking Oz, like Oz Mechanics? Because I'm waiting for it to come across the screen here. Rodney Farmer wants to know which one is Keith. So Keith's one of the guys with the blue wrenches, Rodney. He is a moderator of the channel. So if you say naughty words, he'll delete you or put you in timeout. Let's see. I need to come by a little quick here. Do I miss K cars? I really don't miss K cars much. Did my fair share of head gaskets and timing belt on those things. Sam from the Tool Hut wants to know how many OEM scan tools I wish I owned. All of them. How's that for an answer? Let's see. Jim B wants to know if I like Harbor Freight tools. That depends, Jim. I do have, like the Harbor Freight Daytona Jack, fantastic. My Harbor Freight Earthquake cordless impacts, fantastic. I've got one of the Earthquake reactionless air ratchets. That thing works fantastic. So I suppose it depends on what you buy. When Josh worked here, he had several Pittsburgh tools, I believe, from the Harbor Freight. And of course, their toolbox that he had purchased there, which was, pretty good. So it depends, I guess, is the answer. Josh Jones writes, new Dormant Cat on my 98 Civic, represent. LX in June 2016 after replacing O2s with new Denso's O2 earlier, still throwing a PO420 again in July 2017. You said the key word in the beginning. Aftermarket cats are tricky, particularly Dormant. Don't really want to get down on the company. Don't come here to name bash or anything. It doesn't surprise me, though. I guess I would leave it at that. I would look at the data, see if indeed, if you have no exhaust leaks, the lambda is good, your fuel trims are right on the money. I wouldn't doubt that the Dormant Cat has failed. It wouldn't surprise me at all. Particularly, some cars really don't like aftermarkets, Subarus in general, OEM only. I mean, I've tried every maker under the sun. You cannot get rid of a PO420, slap an OEM CAD on it, good to go. So it doesn't surprise me. If you wanted to try for a warranty, you can put it on. It just depends on how many times you want to change the part. As long as it's being diagnosed properly, it looks like, you got a year out of it. If the thing's gobbling up oil, if you're putting a quart of oil in it every, 600 miles, that wouldn't surprise me either that, an aftermarket cat perhaps only lasted a year. So just make sure you're curing the original cause of the failure. And like I say, making sure the engine is in fuel control before you put any, converter on it whatsoever. How's Hannah doing? Hannah's doing good. She came down today and put on her snow tires. Here we are, second week of January. She puts her snow tires on. Doug Fox writes, any tips on finding oil leaks that are hard to determine the origin of, even with UV dye? So that's pretty tough, Doug. A lot of times I'll use UV dye, but sometimes I'll kind of what I call help leaks along. So if I have a car that comes in, let's say the whole timing cover side of the engine is saturated with oil, what I'll do is I'll bring it in, I'll bust out 6 or 7 cans of brake clean, I'll completely clean it, get rid of all the old oily residue. Usually start the car, let it run in the bay, see if there's any, anything just starting. Sometimes you have to, really examine them, the cracks where the timing cover block, head, valve cover, everything comes together. See if you can see where it's, originating from. Is it leaking up high, coming down? But I think the biggest key is to get all the old crap cleaned off the engine first, regardless if you're using dye or not. And then what I'll do in some cases, now this may be a little unorthodox, but I'll take it for a drive, bring it back in, check it. If I still can't see it, as far as helping them along, I'll plug off the PCV system slightly, build a little bit of crankcase pressure, and help the leak along. Sometimes that works. It's kind of an old school trick, plug off whatever the crankcase vent is, let it build a little pressure, and voila, usually your leak shows up plain as day at that point. Probably not good advice to give people because you can go a little overboard with it. But you do have to have it clean first. That's key. How was that Napa box, man? It's just sitting on the tires. Oh, and we are officially a Napa Auto Care Center now. Just so you guys know, we are Napa North. There's Oz, but I don't see his question. I'll tell you what, Oz, if you have a question, just hit me up on Hit me up on Hangouts. I'll make sure I don't miss it. So we became a Napa Auto Care Center because they had a fantastic deal on it this month. So just for a little explanation, or for the entire year, they had an extremely low buy-in, which if you're a Napa Auto Care Center, you then get a discount on Identifix, like $50 a month discount. So the cost of becoming an auto care center outweighed the cost of, a monthly subscription to Identifix. So I'm at least a Napa Auto Care Center for a year. We'll say that. Of course, there's some other benefits from it if you purchased your parts from Napa. So, oh man, Harris, 8468 asks, who is better, Keith or Scanner Danner? Wow. They're both my friends. I talked to both of them. I haven't worked with Scanner Danner enough to answer that question publicly. So we'll say that. Don't want to get down on anybody. I have worked personally with Keith. He blows me out of the water. I can't even hold a match to him when it comes to diagnostics. So if that gives you any indication as to his skill set, he has tons and tons of experience. 20 plus cars a day, nothing but diag stuff. Asian, domestic, Euro, doesn't matter. He's on it like white on rice. I'm not going to answer that question, Oz. What brand of the red shop towels I use? They are Whiteball. I believe the X70s. Bob Thurber writes, is there any certain vehicles I won't work on? I typically avoid European cars, Bob, and that is for the simple reason of lack of experience. Very few of them. There's very few of them in our area to begin with. We live in, Asian domestic countries, so very few people around here have, a Mercedes or BMW or, anything of that nature. So I very rarely see them. I say that, and I got, a Mini Cooper scheduled for Friday. So Motor City Mechanic. He didn't write anything on here, Motor City. If you guys don't know Motor City Mechanic, definitely check out his channel. He is the Mopar guy. Caesar M says, how much is Identifix? I believe I was paying like $180 a month for that. And now being an Napa Auto Care Center, I think it is $140 a month. So let's see. And I believe Mitchell's around the same price, like $180 a month, something like that. Let's see. Crispin Coleman. You're right, Eric. I have an 06 Monty with a 3.9. When it gets up to temperature from a dead stop on acceleration, engine spins up and the car jerks. No check engine light or code. Thoughts on how to diagnose. Engine spins up and the car jerks. It sounds like you have a problem more in the transmission than with the engine. So I wouldn't be surprised if you didn't have any engine light. I guess that's just my first thought right offhand, just based on your symptoms. I'm assuming that the engine revs up and then, slams into gear. I'll be upfront and honest with you. I don't do a lot of transmission diagnostics as far as, transmission rebuilds, or much of anything really with transmissions other than electrical repairs. So I don't know right offhand. Perhaps I would, in this case, I'd be checking for service bulletin and stuff like that, see if there is, I have to look up some theory and operations if there's any pressure tests or anything he's doing on it, but I am not fluent on, automatics as far as, hydraulic diagnostics, stuff like that. But it does sound to me, just like I say, just based on your symptoms, that's what it sounds like to me. So perhaps, I don't know if you have any good training shops nearby that can look at it for you, or at least verify that is, the complaint. and you know, see if that's the case. So I don't know on that one. You know, GM does have second gear start, you know, so I don't know if it would make a difference. You know, if you put in manual second, see if it still did it. Perhaps if you do end up going to a transmission shop, that would be a clue for them. You could tell them, like, you know, look, it only does it when it's in, you know, drive or manual first. When I put it in manual second, you know, it does or doesn't do it. You know, perhaps that'll give some clues and lead you in the right direction anyways. And, you know, naturally, well, I shouldn't say naturally, you know, of course, you know, check, you know, training fluid level, you know, also would be, you know, a good place to start too. Let's see, Kevin Wallace. Oops, this comment just went by. Do you have a snap-on test light with a voltmeter built into it? I do, Kevin. I have one. It's not snap-on. I don't know if it's Lyle or who makes it. Let's see, I've got a couple of them. I don't remember who makes this one. So they're an LED test light. They got a little voltmeter display on them. I mean, they're okay. They're kind of worthless. LED, you know, draws almost insignificant amounts of current, but it does draw current. These are not high impedance, so they will send you on a wild goose chase if you are looking at something like, you know, like a 5-volt reference, because you'll check it and it'll say like 4.6 volts. Check it with a meter, it's at 5 volts. So there is a little bit of resistance built into the tool. I don't really 100% see the purpose of it, but I do have one. I think somebody sent me one, but it is nothing that I would have purchased myself. Well, thank you, Charles. You wrote that we have the best videos. That's a fantastic thing for you to do, Charles. Appreciate the super chat. Let's see. Dab, was it? Dad Bobbit 94, I guess it is. Dad Bobbit, sorry. Dad Bobbit 94. So I always search for a good ground for the scope on the rope when you could hook up your power probe to the battery. So I don't know if he's thinking the same thing I am, which I've done, you know, on occasions is, you know, car's super crusty. I'll hook up the power probe simply to use the ground on it so I can use my test light. Yeah, I mean, that's definitely good advice. I do also have a really long jump wire that I'll use sometimes before I got my scope on a rope 2.0 with the vice grips on it. Now we can find a good ground anywhere because you can just crunch through all the rust. But that is, you know, some good advice to use the power probe to utilize the ground on it. I suppose you could use the power probe itself. Depends on, you know, situation that you need it for. Donovan DeCoster gave a super chat and he says 95 1500 had an explosion in right valve cover. It's not really much of a question, but not sure what kind of 1500 either, but it doesn't sound good if your valve cover is exploding. Denise S says, hubby enjoys your videos. I will tell him to time in. And then she waves. Oh boy. So SK Automotive and Garden Machinery, he writes, Eric, which scanner would you recommend, OTC or Autel, pros or cons? If I had to choose based on personal opinion and having used both of the tools, I would choose the Autel. That's strictly my opinion. I have a lot of pros. There are some cons with it, as with every scan tool. If you want the real answer, buy both. But if I had to choose one, I would grab my Autel. A lot more features on it. Of course, being a Chinese scan tool, they don't have to abide by a lot of the same laws. So you get a few features which technically shouldn't even be on there, but they are. Therefore, it makes it a little bit of a better tool. Anderson Cooper says hi. That's from CNN. Well, hello back, Anderson Cooper. Yeah, we hit the big time with Anderson Cooper, huh? Let's see. Tim Boyd, he writes, what do I use? Ah, crap, man, these things go by too quick. There we go. What do I use for shop management software, estimates, repair orders, and invoices? Up until I became in a full-fledged NAP Auto Care Center, we just use actually since 2005, just a generic invoicing program. Invoice and Estimates Pro, I believe it's by NovaSoft software. It's just a generic invoice writer. You know, it's pretty much just a spreadsheet set up. Works well for us. You know, we can keep our inventory in there, select it out, write the invoice. Estimating, I go off either, you know, motor manual time or Mitchell time. So that's what we use on that as far as our flat rate. So, but now I have Napa Tracks. So that's what we'll be using from now on. PSK Performance Rates, I'm going to come work with you for a week, pro bono. So you'll be convinced to finally hire another tech again, increase the car count and the money, baby. Pro bono, okay. I'll make sure I got a pile of tires here for you. No, I do realize the benefits of having another guy. You know, and a lot of days I wish I did. But, you know, it's tough. It's hard to find sometimes. Have I received my play button yet from YouTube? I have not, John. What's going on there, Keith? Keith said Eric is definitely not racist, so hopefully there wasn't some comment that I missed stating that I was, but definitely not. Am I tired of shoveling coal yet? No, we did burn through a lot of coal past few weeks, man. It's been blistering cold. Xbox Gamer, he writes, what would cause my speedometer to be off? I go 45, it reads 55. 60, it reads 75. 75, it reads 92. Well, I'm not sure what kind of vehicle you're working on. Perhaps the, you know, some cars have programmable parameters that can be set depending on what vehicle it is, where you can set, you know, axle ratio, you know, tire size. That's something else to keep in mind. If the vehicle does not have the correct tires on it that it is, you know, designed for, will also throw your speedometer off. You know, without knowing what it is, what kind of vehicle, you know, like, you know, some vehicles you could actually have the incorrect speedometer gear on the bottom of the speed sensor. So yeah, there's quite a few items that could cause that. You know, short of seeing it, you know, I honestly don't know, but there are a lot of, depending on make and model, a lot of variables. Lewis M writes, will Duramax crank without an ECM? Likely it will not, because that's typically where the start command comes from. You know, short of jumping the, you know, starter solenoid, but. Let's see. John S. wants to know if I have a favorite scan tool. In the aftermarket scan tools, I do favor my Alto. I really like my Alto. So I would have to say that's my favorite, but it is flawed just like all of them. Let's see. Hubby asked, Honda Ridgeline 06 with 126K on the clock. Just did the timing belt. Thanks to your video. Double thumbs up. Is valve adjustment recommended? Absolutely. Particularly on that 3.5 and on that 06. Do the valve adjustments. They're easy to do. You know, you pull the intake off, you get both valve covers off, and do it when the engine's cold. Get a manual if you're not familiar with it. That way you only have to roll the engine over once, I guess it is. So your front cam gear, when you pull on your front timing cover on that Honda, if you pull the little rubber off, it's going to have, you know, marks, whatever the firing order is, like a 1.5. I'm embarrassed, I don't know it. but you're going to, rotate the engine over till those marks are lined up. You're going to adjust the valves on the cylinder that it's pointing to, number 1, and, you roll it again, and number 5, and, go right down the line. Definitely adjust the valves on them. They do have a tendency, as you know, if you watch my videos, to burn up the number 4 or 5 exhaust valve. And typically that can be caused from a valve getting too tight. So that exhaust valve doesn't hit the valve seat all the way, can't transfer the heat. Next thing you know, it's burnt, and now you have no compression. So definitely, if you have the ability to, or the means to have it done at a shop, definitely have a valve adjustment done. Oh, looks like somebody's getting booted. The blue wrench has got somebody. Remington 870 or Mossberg 500, 2 of my favorites. I would pick the 870 over the Mossberg 500. I do own both, but I would prefer the 870. Particularly in a, like a home defense situation, your 870, if for whatever reason it decided to double feed where you had, one in the chamber, and then let's say the shell catch didn't work and, dropped another shell underneath it, you can still eject the shell in the chamber. You have to do it forcefully, but the way Remington designs, the pickup on the bottom of the gun is, you can take it, you can slam it down, to, eject the shell, and it will actually, kick both of them out and then still function, where your Mossberg wouldn't do that. So, but, and it doesn't happen that often. I mean, the Mossberg 500 is pretty reliable. So, but I would say the 870, in my opinion. Jeff Chappell writes, have I ever eaten sushi? Dude, I love sushi. That is one of my favorite things to eat. So yes, I've eaten sushi. I love my wasabi. Yeah, even VW Wrenchy says that sushi rocks. Yeah, I don't know if I like sushi or if I like wasabi, but let's see. 30-06 or 308. I would probably have to go with a 30-06. They both going to have the same bullet coefficient, but I would go with a 30-06. Do any Asians live in Avoca, New York? My sister does. She's Asian, so I guess that counts. There's parasites in sushi. Well, that must be what makes it taste so yummy. Somebody made a comment that my sound just got better. So unfortunately, when my furnace kicks on, it goofs up the sound somehow. So do I have a sister-in-law? I do have a sister-in-law. Ooh, Toyota or Honda. If I had to pick one, I would, boy. If we're just talking about manufacturers, not talking, if I had to pick a truck, obviously I got to pick Toyota because Honda doesn't really make a truck. I mean, they make the Ridgeline, which is a half truck. But if I had to pick one just by brand, I would probably pick Honda. They're more affordable to work on. Boy, they're both pretty easy to work on. I would likely pick Honda. So that's just, well, that's a tough call. Why do you ask questions like that? Have I ever done a 4.6 timing chain? Yes. I have a 2000 Crown Vics, needs new timing chain. Enjoy watching videos. I would say, Matt, get a book. They're relatively easy to do, particularly on a Crown Vic. You have lots of room. You're not leaning way over the hood like you have to on the pickups. Pretty easy to do. Buy the parts OEM. Get the OEM guides and tensioner and chain. I particularly wouldn't be screwing around with aftermarkets. When I do timing chains on anything, I always go OEM. It's the way to fly, baby. But get yourself a book so you know what you're doing. You know the torque specs. You got torque everything to spec. So that would be my advice to you. Am I going to swap my Civic from an auto to a manual? Unlikely. I would have to have a donor vehicle to do so I could take, all the donor parts if the circumstances were right, where I found one that was crashed that I could have for a while and steal all the parts. I have entertained that idea. So particularly if we're going to put a turbo on it. I wouldn't want to do it on the automatic slush box, but the automatic that's in it works fine currently. David Tyndall writes 92 Chevrolet C1500. So she's a 2-wheel peeler. New booster and master cylinder. Stomp on the brakes from a panic. The pedal is hard and takes a long time to apply the brakes. Almost ran over a kid at the McDonald's. How fast were you going through McDonald's, man? So that's pretty interesting. New booster and master cylinder. If he stomps on the brakes for a panic stop, the pedal's hard and takes a long time to apply. I would be curious, first and foremost, how the brakes feel normally. In a panic stop, I can't think why the why the pedal would be hard, but you wouldn't exhibit any other symptoms. Let's say if you had brake hoses collapsing, which would be that style on them C1500s. I don't know where you live, but around here, so the brake hoses on those come down and they clip on the upper control arms, I believe. They have the metal clamps that go around them, so those metal clamps tend to rust up and they'll really squeeze the brake hoses quite hard. Which would ultimately give you a problem during normal braking. You would have an issue where you let off the brakes, but they still stayed applied. It'd act like a frozen caliper if that was the case. I don't know. I would perhaps, David, I guess I'd give you some advice. I would check, make sure it is, receiving full vacuum, make sure there's not an issue with your check valve there. But I mean, ultimately it would have full vacuum over time. But I can't think of anything right offhand that would actually make the pedal stiff though on a panic stop. I honestly, I'm not sure, David. Like I said, I'd want to know if you had any other symptoms other than just that situation. Because I'm thinking if there's if you had some restrictions in the line, you would have other symptoms. Yeah, I'll give that some more thought. And sometimes I can't come up with stuff right off the cuff. Have you tried, bleeding the brakes to see if you do have any restrictions in flow? Cracking is there a problem with proportioning, perhaps somewhere where you're not getting full fluid flow to the rear, but perhaps you don't notice it under normal braking. I'd be checking stuff like that. Is the system bled out? Is there air in the system? I would think that would give you a spongy pedal. I just would think that anything would give you issues during normal braking. Also, if there was any brake rod adjustments or, yeah, I can't think right offhand. Let's see. And I get, yeah, so it's a couple people here writing about vacuum assist not working. He did say it was a new brake booster. I should know better than most that, just because it's new doesn't mean it works. So, oh yeah, you know what? Let's see, somebody, so C.O. Jones wrote the poppet valve and the proportioning valve, and he has a good point with that. So let's say, hypothetically your rear brake shoes are, way out of adjustment, and, you go to slam on the brakes. There is a poppet valve on the proportioning valve that when you blow a brake line, it extracts and then, blocks off that line so you can have brakes. Perhaps you could look at that proportioning valve. Usually it has a little rubber cap over it. And, you can have somebody, sit there and just, do an emergency stop, just slam that brake pedal and see if that shuttle valve comes out and is, blocking off that brake line. Perhaps it could be something as simple as a rear brake adjustment. That's what I love about this chat. We can get some ideas going. Let's see. Oops. Patriot Games race. Do women try to barter when they can't pay? Well, answer that's no. Thought on white rise nationalism in USA. No comments, and research flat earth. Well, I'm not sure about all your comments, but do appreciate the super chat. Politics, religion, we don't talk about here on our channel. Try to keep it just automotive and whatever else is out there besides that. JB writes codes PO 172 and 175, so those should be your rich codes. Went to several mechanics in my area, and none will do the alcohol percent test. Have an 07 Avalanche with a 5.3 flex fuel. Never used the 85, but have 74% alcohol on the scan tool. I believe I've done a video on this, JB. You are going to have the alcohol learned value reset. Then that will, ultimately fix your rich condition. Also check on that one too to see if there is any service programming updates for that. But I mean, it seems that you have it all diagnosed right here. You have everything that you need to know. Answering Keith here real quick. Yeah, so it sounds to me like you've already diagnosed it. You've got it in the bag. You just need somebody to reset your alcohol content, using a scan tool. Most aftermarket scan tools can handle that. DVD DMC, he writes, when balancing a standard steel wheel, weights on the inside or outside, have wheel covers with certain spots that need to go on. Does it really matter? So if I'm doing a steel wheel, DVD DMC, I balance dynamically, so I'm going to use a weight on the inside and a weight on the outside. That's going to give you your best balance. Most of your felt vibration is from static balance, so you can static balance them. So I think what his question is that he has wheel covers with certain spots that need to go on. Doesn't really matter. Perhaps some wheel covers, depending on where the weight is, it will interfere with the wheel cover. I've, in some instances, have gotten away with this quite a bit. You balance the wheel, inside, outside weights, go to put the hubcap on, the aftermarket hubcap, it has, one of the claws that it grabs onto, and it's right where you have a weight. If you move that weight slightly, you're only talking like an inch or so usually to get you where you need to go. I haven't had any negative results from that yet. If I had to move a weight, 4 inches away, you're probably going to have some issues. But just shifting them, left or right, an inch to get your wheel covers on, probably shouldn't hurt. You could always have your wheels statically balanced, weights only on the inside, or you could have, one clip-on weight, one stick-on weight, and that would, resolve your problem ultimately. So hopefully that helps for you. MD Lee, 97 Camry. She's running rich. What should I do? Find the cause of the rich running, MD Lee. That would be my advice to you. Lots of things. Well, not lots of things. Running rich. You could have excessive fuel pressure. I don't know if that's a mass airflow engine or a MAP engine. Low manifold vacuum, increasing, MAP voltage will goof them up. I don't know if it's a serious question or not, MD Lee. But yeah, skewed mass, airflow, skewed MAP, stuck purge solenoids, swamp crankcases, a few things that cause rich conditions. You know how to get a hold of me, MD Lee. If that is a legit question, let me know. Let's see. They want to know if Mrs. O can do more wrenching episodes with me. She's been pretty busy in the office as of late, of course, with the big switch over becoming, corporation, and then the whole NAP auto care thing and all that stuff, lots of paperwork and whatnot. So Kyle P writes, he's got a 95 Yukon that's OBD1, wants something that can do more than just read codes. First thing that comes to my mind on that, Kyle P, is browse around on eBay, Craigslist, find yourself an old snap-on MT, like 2400, the red brick we always call them, 2400 or 2500 MT. Find one of those. That it will be a fantastic tool. Usually you can pick them up dirt cheap, you know, a couple $100. Great OBD1 tool for, and they even work on, you know, OBD2. I don't know when they quit making updates for them, but people darn near give those things away. And they were a great tool on GM. I need a new Hannah. Yeah, I know I do. Need another assistant. Can I play the harmonica for you? I don't play the harmonica, but I have just recently started to self-teach piano via YouTube. So I want to see if I can successfully learn to play the piano via YouTube only. What do I think about changing rod and main bearings out of maintenance in a car like they do on big diesel trucks? So typically big diesel trucks will get your 1,000,000-mile service where, you know, 1,000,000 miles, usually you do an in-frame, sometimes just mains and rods, depends on what it needs. As far as doing it on an automobile, I guess that's a geographical challenge for me. Everything we have never makes it that far. The engines run long after the car's gone to the crusher. I guess if you lived in an area where, you know, the body would perhaps outlast the engine. As far as putting rods and mains in a gasoline engine, you know, perhaps it's quite a big task. Of course, you know, I think they would tend. I don't think a gasoline engine, you know, in comparison to, you know, a diesel engine, it's going to last near as long. You know, they spin, you know, just rotation, you know, twice as fast. You know, so they red line at 5,000 instead of 2,000. You know, if you're going to take the engine out and you're going to do, you know, rod bearings, main bearings, you know, at that point you just, you know, re-ring it and rebuild it. I don't know. I haven't seen enough high mileage engines to see what other wear factors there are. I suppose there are some variables. And at what mileage would you do it? You know, do you pull them at 250,000? It's not too often, I guess, that I see cars come in high mileage, you know, say 200,000 plus on them, that actually have rod or, you know, main bearing issues. You know, coming in just, you know, oh, car was running great and just developed a rod knock out of the blue, something that was normally maintained. So that's a good question, though. Let's see. Do I have a key cutting machine? I don't. Yeah, Tractor Wrangler writes, you know, only if the oil pressure is suffering badly. That leaves me with some other questions, particularly that his name is Wrangler. You know, what if you have a Wrangler with a 4.0 in it and you're suffering from oil pressure, you do mains and rods and you're all done and your oil pressure still sucks because the cam bearings are wiped out of it. Like I say, if you're going to tear it apart to that point, you know, where do you stop? Would be my question. Mike writes that he has a B18C with 1,000,000 on it. That's pretty impressive if you actually have 1,000,000 miles on a gas engine. That's really impressive. Oh, gosh. Blazer Guy 1983, he writes, I may be asking question wrong. I want to buy a power probe, but curious how it works. That's going to depend on which power probe you get. There's multiple ones. I don't know what series they go back to now, but I've got the OG, the Power Probe 1. I think I've got a Power Probe 3 and a Power Probe Hook. They all have different features. Essentially, they are, you know, a self-powered tester. You hook them to power and ground. You have the ability with a rocker switch to apply power and ground at the tip on a circuit protected, you know, push button. So, you know, Mine is, I think the original one is like 10 amps or 15 amps. The Power Probe hook is adjustable up to 60 amps. Of course, they have other features on the newer ones. They have built-in driver testers. They have, like, you can test, I think the hook, you can check, duty cycle, pulse width. The Power Probe 3, you can do like injector testing with them, where you can check, injector peak voltage, injector on time, so they do have a few other benefits. If I was you, I would go right on Power Probe's website, look at the different products. They're going to give you the whole lowdown as far as what you can and can't do with them. If you're a beginner and you're doing the hokey pokey around your car, you want to do some testing, be careful. You can let the smoke out of the box in no time flat with a Power Probe, just FYI. The tool in and of itself is not dangerous. The guy behind the wheel is. So make sure you know what circuit you're testing before you start pushing any buttons on it. What time is it here? It is almost 7 p.m. Oh, gosh. Sorry, excuse me. What's in the Napa box behind me? That's what Mike Mayfield wants to know. Let's have a look. An old rubber. Did some brakes today. They're still on my cart. Dodge Avenger front and rear brakes. Rear brake shoes. I thought about doing a video on it because you guys, for whatever reason, want a rear brake shoe video. But those ones are gravy. Oh yeah, don't forget the kids. What time is it? Oh, I got time. We got plenty of time. That's what the Napa contract came in. Who is my Bach oil supplier? We buy our oil from NOCO, so they are our mobile supplier. Of course, they just got bought out. I don't know who bought them out, but they used to be NOCO oil. 97 Chevrolet S10 two-wheel drive manual with a 2.2 4-banger. Change oil every 3K. What's my thoughts on the 2.2? Those 2.2s, in my opinion, were good little engines. Vanessa actually had one in her. Now, when I was a young lad, to woo her, I bought her a Chevy Corsica. Yeah, that's boyfriend material right there. She had just crashed her car. So I wanted to woo her and win her over, and I tried to do that with a Chevy Corsica. Had the 2.2 in it. That was a good engine. They did have their issues with what they always do, injectors. Injectors going to leaking on them, externally leaking, dumping all down the exhaust manifold, and you'd smell burning gas. But as long as your manifold's not leaking, no big deal. Overall, though, gosh, I haven't seen one of those things in quite a while. They were good little engines. I've done, of course, lots of different things to them. Everything from leaky timing covers, water pumps. But I have a customer, he just got rid of his, I think it was a 2000 frame finally rotted in half, and he had like 280,000 miles on it, and there was, service regularly. So just depends on how good they're taken care of, I suppose. Yeah, they're no big powerhouse. Cool as Ice says, sup, Eric. Sup, Cool as Ice. Let's see. Oh, somebody says I'm losing my sound. Do you guys still have my sound? Is everything good? Mic check, 1, 2. All right, so they say it's good. All right, I guess it's good. Maybe it's just on his end. Oops. I'm Sabbath said that his kid is teething. What's the best teething remedy? A good pair of earplugs always helps. If you can't hear them, you know what I'm saying? What's the best method? Teething remedy? I don't know. I think when I was a baby, I have memories. I think my mom would give you like a wet washcloth and put like a little dab of sugar or something on it. You could chew on that. I think we always had like give them chew toys, just like dogs, you know. I'm not the best with the baby advice. Let's see. Jared writes he's got an 11 Optima with a 2.4. It's got the P0014 only code, exhaust cam over advance. Thinking to test the VCT oil control solenoid and check the screen for debris. That would be a good test to start with, Jared. I suppose one thing, anytime I get, you know, P001, whatever, you know, pertaining to cam crank correlation, I always it's always my habit to throw a scope on it. As a matter of fact, I did a Chevy with a 2.9 the other day that would, very low mileage too, that would, you know, set these, you know, cam timing codes, you know, 001617, whatever they were. And it was pretty interesting because we would scope it when the engine was warm and everything's fine. You know, I mean, cam timing is dead on the money, but this code would generate every single day, you know, spot on the money. You go out, start up, boom, lights on. Check the engine when it was cold. Of course, this already had a new, you know, solenoid in it, you know, the VTC solenoid, you know, variable cam timing solenoid that has already been replaced. Checked it when the engine was cold, and you could clearly see watching it on the scope that the lock pin on the cam phaser would not hold. You know, it started up, you know, cam timing's all over the place. As soon as it warmed up for like, you know, not even a minute, boop, you know, lock pin and grab back hold of it, away you go. So perhaps in your case, Jared, you know, it'd be my approach on that car. I would check my base timing with scope, cam and crank correlation, see what it looks like. If I was able to, you know, advance or retard the cam with a scan tool bidirectionally, I would watch it to see if it actually functioned. I'd be making sure I got my control to my solenoid, make sure that, you know, that portion of it was there. You know, making sure that the, you know, computer was commanding it. If it wasn't functioning at that point, I would want to verify that my control solenoid was working. You know, if indeed it was, at that point, you know, you're pulling the cover to have, you know, to have a look at the cam phaser itself, see if it's actually physically stuck, or, you know, maybe you can tell by your scope if the timing is indeed just off. What do you call a camel with no humps? Hump free. That reminds me of another joke. What do you call a 3-humped camel? Pregnant. Do I know any other languages? I don't. I'm just trying to learn the piano, man. I just want to be able to sing Mrs. O songs, so I got to learn the piano. My fingers are too fat and broken to play guitar, so. Tom Tramp, he writes, he's got an 09 Sierra fuel pump, no power from module, new reprogrammed module. So it's pretty interesting, Tom. So I'm assuming that you have, exactly as you state, no power coming from the fuel pump control module. And then I'm also assuming that you installed the new module and programmed it on the vehicle. I guess in this case, I would first and foremost just, you know, check for codes. That module is as big and complicated as it looks, is relatively simple. At that point, if you didn't have any communication codes pertaining to that module, I'd see if I had the ability to talk to it. I would look at my data input going into it to see if it's being sent the signal to, you know, turn on. What's it, you know, what's it seeing? Why isn't it turning on? I know that sounds kind of cliche saying that. If it appeared on scan data that it had everything it needed to work, I'd be checking my, you know, powers and grounds at my fuel pump module. I'd grab a wire diagram and see what we needed back there. I do believe I've done a couple videos on these, particularly I think maybe even that year on fuel pump driver modules. I don't know if in that video I showed pinouts or who's who, but maybe that can give you a little insight on that. Let's see. Slow these down a little bit here. Any new tools? I did go on a binge the other day, Chris. I got sick of walking back and forth to grab tools from over here, so I made the Mac man a pretty happy man the other day. So I had to get some new sockets and stuff over on the other side, and Torx bits and Allen bits, and just stuff that I was continually breaking. And so, John Deere, Kubota. I own a Kubota, so I'd have to say Kubota. I do like my Farmall better than all of them. So probably Case International. How's that? Get rid of my Jeep. Why would I get rid of my Jeep hat? Why are you guys hating on my Jeep hat? What brand torque wrenches do I use? All of my torque wrenches are snap-on. So I've got the snap-on tech angle wrenches. So they're going to be the ones with built-in gyrometer for angle torquing. They're all digital. And then, yeah, my other ones, even my click type ones are all snap-on. My inch pounds, foot pounds. So yeah, all my are snap-on. Ooh, Spanky said she called Keith Eric the other day. Bad move. He has yet to forgive him or her. I'm sure he'll forgive you. Gear wrench 120 ratchets versus snap-on. I couldn't make that comparison because I've never owned a gear wrench 120. So I don't know. That's right, Robert. We're going to keep the Jeep hat. And he makes a picture of a little Jeep girl with the round headlights, because we all know real Jeeps have round headlights. How did I meet Keith? Via YouTube. What about the boys? Do they ever want to help out in the shop? That comes from Rick. They do. Particularly my oldest boy now. He grew up essentially out in the shop all the time. He had his little four-wheeler that he would ride around, a little kick one. And I mean, he'd play out here all day. And then, he grew up, went to kindergarten, and that ended that. He still likes to come out and mess around sometimes. He was playing with a sandblaster the other day. He's got a little metal detector, and he's been finding junk in the yard, and then he brings it here and puts it in the sandblaster, and I give him a hand doing that. So the fake Scotty Kilmer account writes, my fuel injector cleaner isn't fixing all my problems like it used to. Should I add more cleaner to my cleaner to make it clean like a cleaner should? If you can answer the age-old riddle of how much wood could a woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood, Scotty, perhaps you'll find the answer to that question. Let's see. Will a burnt or bent valve always give out check engine light? Perhaps if your vehicle has the ability to monitor misfires, if your valve is burnt or bent, certainly it's going to misfire, and then set a misfire code and your engine light will be on. So you're going to be looking for something, 96 and newer. It should. Is the Mohawk lift ordered? No, it's not yet, but I need to get a new lift. I need to, but it just sucks, man. This time of year sucks for having to buy stuff. Of course, with taxes, we get all of our taxes. I don't know, you're going to piss them over about. I mean, taxes come every year, but, of course, paying income tax and your state, town, and county, and property and school taxes. Of course, we live in one town. We work here, so we get the best of both worlds. We get blasted in both places, and so. But yeah, I do need to get on it. Order a lift. Bottom line. Are we slow right now? We are not. I typically don't have much of a slow period, Star. Of course, working by yourself, it tends to stay pretty busy. What are the best way to plug vacuum ports in an intake manifold? Just with vacuum port cap offs. So you may even be able to just Google it on Amazon. I've got like a plastic tray assortment of them, just a little, little rubber covers. If you want to go straight redneck on it, chop off a piece of, vacuum hose that fits whatever vacuum port you're plugging and stick a bolt in the end of it. But yeah, you can buy actual vacuum port caps. Oops, there we go. Man, you guys with the blue wrenches are already all over this thing. Should D6 Spanky be the new Hannah? I think she lives too far away to become the new Hannah, but she would probably fit in well in the shop. I'm a pretty tough boss, though. Not really. But it's a long drive from where she lives. Taxes, forget about it. Right? Yeah, forget about it. You forget about it, they come and find you. That's the problem. I'm not making fun of rednecks there, Redneck Rickham. I'm just saying I know how to do it, man. If you got the small vacuum line, you take it off, you take a BB out of your BB gun, it fits right in there perfect. Then you hook the hose back up and it looks legit. That's pro redneck. Let's see. Randall Main writes, a 15 Ford Transit with a 2195, so it's bank one. Sensor 102 sensor stuck lean. Rough running, fuel pressure at 60. Other shop put both O2 sensors in it. So being a 15, I guess what I would want to check, Randall, is it indeed running lean? What does the downstream O2 sensor on that side say? Are the fuel trims maxed out? Are there any service programming updates for it? I'm not familiar with the 15 Transit. Other things that could cause that too are, which I doubt on that. It's pretty new. Do you have any oxygen leaks on that side? Is it leaking, at or around the oxygen sensor bung? But I guess the first thing I would do is see if indeed, is that sensor line, is your downstream, pegged out almost rich, trying to make up for this supposed lean condition. But also, like I said, I'd be checking to see if there is any service bulletins or programming updates. Perhaps Keith knows right offhand. Maybe you can answer it in the comment box. Cool as ice writes, do I use a block heater? I don't. I have a block heater on my one diesel tractor, but I don't otherwise, not in any of my normal vehicles. Let's see. Do I add an hour if the car is really rusty? I'd have to add an hour to everything, Ben. So no, I don't. Let's see. Off-road Edge wants to know the best way to locate a possible vacuum leak. It only happens in the morning when it's cold. The best way, if you want to know the best way, is just smoke the intake manifold when the engine's cold. That would be the best way. There's other ways to do it, but the best way to be just hook, have a car sit outside, 0 degrees in the morning, throw the smoke machine on it right where it sits, and enjoy the leaks, because there should be plenty. So the cold will definitely bring them out. Oh my gosh, what time are we getting to here? How long? Oh my gosh, 7:11. How long did we go last time? 2 hours. Live chat with Redneck Rickham. That's right. Donald Trump wants to know what's the best way to fix this country. I don't think that's the real Donald Trump. Suggestions for a DIYer to do it without buying a smoke machine. Now, that's a different story. So I would say if you're doing it without a smoke machine, you're going to have a scan tool so you can read your fuel trims, start it up as soon as it hits closed loop, which, depending on what your vehicle is, should happen relatively quickly, before your vacuum leak is sealed up. Otherwise, it wouldn't be set in code for you. In that case, then the thing I'm supposed to tell you is use, propane or a water bottle, to go along and find your leak. I use brake clean. Super dangerous. It could explode, light your whole car on fire. But that's the method I use. Yeah, don't forget the milk. It's more important than or don't forget the kids. More important than the milk. I forgot. That's true. I did forget the milk the other day, though. Mike Floyd writes, do you have any way of installing a harmonic balancer on a Caravan of 3.8 with a 10mm crank bolt? So if you don't have a crank pulley installer tool, and it's, you know, say it's 10mm fine thread is the thread pitch, you can just get a piece of, you know, threaded rod, and then, you know, just screw it into the crank, slip your pulley over it, you know, put it on, get it started, then just use, you know, a flat washer or, you know, a flat face bearing. I don't know if I got any sitting here. Well, I'm going to tip over. No, they must all be out my hub tamer kit, or, you know, so like these were these D5s, these D5 flat face bearings, you know, thread your rod into the crank, you know, put another, you know, nut on it. So that's going to take what, like a 19mm wrench, and then just, you know, spin that nut on to press it on. Would be my method. I have a crank pulley installer for those. So, but yeah, the piece of threaded rod with a, you know, nut and washer will work just fine. The EAA Chapter 936 president. Wow. I'm not sure what EAA is. I wish I knew now, though. I can't tell what's in his avatar. Not sure. Eric, the best show in town. Well, we're the only show in Avoca, so I think that is a true statement. Have a Pontiac Grand Prix 03. Would you see any problem using Dextron 6 over 3? I live in the desert outside of Las Vegas. Pat. So that must be Pat. So I would say, Pat, if you check with GM, there's likely a service bulletin for that car to switch from Dextron 3 to Dextron 6. They are compatible. I have done that several times myself without issues. However, they're not backwards compatible. If you have a Dextron 6 transmission, you're not supposed to fill it with Dextron 3. Sometimes it's my habit when a car comes in, let's say you bring in a, you know, an 03 Grand Prix, and it was originally filled with Dextron 3. I still carry Dextron 3. I'd give you a choice. You know, do you want to fill it back up with that? It's a little bit less money. So I would say it's up to you. I don't believe you're going to cause any damage by going to it, as, you know, both the products are compatible. So I hope that answers your question. I wish I was living in the desert right now because it's cold. So EAA must be something to do with flying. I thought that was perhaps an airplane in the back of his picture. It's an aviation thing. I wouldn't understand. All right. As long as we got that solved. D6 Spanker, right? She's doing the flight of the bumblebee cleaning because she has company coming. This is good entertainment. She's doing the 5-minute fluff and stuff. The in-laws are on their way. I could be an A&P mechanic. I'm not sure what that is. Hopefully it's not an airplane. I wouldn't want that responsibility. Let's see. Would I ever make a separate gun channel? Probably not. And it's not just because, you know, guns are such a debatable topic. You know, I mean, guns kill everybody. I'm not a gun connoisseur. I buy guns that are practical, that are usable, that I use. I enjoy shooting and reloading, but I'm by no means a professional. So, you know, likely not. I hate to give out wrong advice. You know, perhaps if it was just for fun, you know, I really enjoyed shooting a lot and really enjoy reloading. So, but yeah, it's likely not. I just don't have the time. What it comes down to. How's the video contest going? I don't know. I don't know until it's over. I see there's some new folks on there that submitted their videos, so we'll find out when it's over. I got a special plan if we do win it to benefit our YouTube channel. and some other stuff, but I'm not going to announce that until we know what's going on. Yep, reloading is an art. I love reloading. You know, I've got bullet concentricity gauges, and you know, I measure the run out on all my cases, and so I do enjoy it. Oh, the worst car to replace a starter in. Well, you know, a lot of people tend to think of, like, you know, the Toyota, what, the 4.7 and the, you know, the North Star, where the starter's under the intake manifold, but realistically, they're not that difficult to do. Gosh, I can't think right offhand, which I don't ever recall doing one where I'm like, wow, that sucked. You know, most starters and most everything you can bang out pretty quick. Guys in the comments are rating BMW, so I wouldn't know that because I never see them. Chevette, Miata, Duramax. Yeah, so nothing I've done that seems anything German, it says. What reloader do I use? I have a rock chucker and RCBS, and drawing a blank, a Redding. Gosh, what is it? The 50 BMG, you know, so they're a deep neck Redding press. A Bugatti. Hey, Eric, I can't find the light you were using in the Ford Freestyle vid at the Self-Made Auto Store. Would you like to know where you got it? So that is an Astro 450 SL. Should be able to find those on Amazon. Have I ever seen a 3.1 GM blow the lower intake gasket? I used to do those things in my sleep, Kyle. 3.1 and a 3.4. Done. I could have countless numbers of them. I think I actually wore out a rocker arm tool for taking the rocker arms off them because I have two of them. The one's pretty bad shape. I used to do a bazillion of those things. Oh yeah, the Ford Escape alternator, they do suck. You got to pull the passenger side axle shaft out of them. They do suck. All right, I'm sorry to keep yawning on you guys. Frogmouth Flint wants to know if I would buy a car or truck from the junkyard. I'm not sure what he means by that, but if it's a salvage title vehicle, maybe, you know, it's going to depend on how it was repaired. So yeah, I'm not 100% sure what you mean by that. My favorite oil filter brand, I do like Wix. So that's gonna cover a host of filters. You know, everything from your Napas, you know, Napa Golds to, you know, Wix. They're sold a lot of private label lines, and I do like my Purilators. So. Time is it? I was gonna make sure I ain't gonna miss the kids. Mrs. O will be all upset I come home and no chillins. Not a fan of Fram. Is anybody a fan of Fram? Let's see. What's my favorite YouTube channel to watch? I like watching Good Mythical Morning. That's one of my favorites. I do watch automotive channels, but I have some others that I watch. So Good Mythical Morning, that's on my hit list. Oh gosh, I'd have to look through my list to think. That's probably one that I watch every day anyways. They put out video every day. Pretty good stuff. Sorry with the heater kicking on that it messes up, but I don't want to sit here and freeze my butt off. What camera do I film with? I just got a new one. What is this thing? A Canon HFR 800. There it is. That's the new Canon. pretty fancy. And that's you watching me watching you. There's my little camera on my computer. We'll zoom in there. That's that little guy. That's my little chat box. So yeah, this is my new Canon. I bought this particularly because it had a microphone input, and that's what I wanted, so I could wear one of them little mics, be all professional like. But the microphone I bought was junk, so now I've got to get a new one. I sent it back to the Amazon, but prior to that, I just used a little Sony Handycam. So Canon, old Kendra and Natalie. Any deer? I did. I got a couple deer this year, so we're all set on that. Do I like the 4.3 Vortec? I don't have any problems with the 4.3 Vortec. It was a pretty solid little engine. Duramax versus Cummins. I would probably go with the Cummins. They're easier to put a delete on if I ever did a delete, which I've never done, but I've heard that. How much was the camera? I don't know. I think it was like 200 bucks, maybe 250. I can't recall. They're not, you know, awful expensive. Do I ask customers to come back for lug nut retorque? Is it necessary? No, I guess I'm not going to try to blow smoke at you. And I've never had a customer in the however many years I've been here come back. And I've never lost any wheels either. So knock on stainless steel. Do I smoke? I don't. Or I'd be smoking right now. Have I ever thought of having my own TV show? Well, this is my TV show, man. No, nobody wants to watch this crap on TV. They want reality TV, you know? Plotted, mapped out reality. '03 Ford V6 hard start unless you cycle the key 3 times. I've already replaced the fuel pump. That is from our friend Drive Shaft Drew. I would be checking, even though you've changed the fuel pump, I'd be checking the fuel pressure regulator. I guess first and foremost, I'd be checking fuel pressure to see if you actually have a bleed off issue. So you can bleed off back through the fuel pump or through the return side of the system too. So I'd be checking that to see if it's bleeding off, you know, past the pressure regulator. But first I would make sure that you are dealing with a fuel delivery issue, which if you're cycling the key and, you know, it consistently starts, you know, 3 cycles starts, you know, every time, all the time, then you likely are dealing with a fuel delivery issue. This is reality TV. Somewhat. Yeah, I mean, this is real reality. I'm talking like reality TV like you see on the shows on TV, you know, all the scripted, you know, plotted reality. Oh, and then they go all zippy zap again. Miguel Miranda. I think that's what it says. Miguel Miranda, what's the best relay tester? As far as a dedicated relay testing device, I don't know. There are several relay testers. I always test them. You can use, you know, if you have a power probe, you can use a power probe or just a couple jump wires to see if your relay's working. I've never had any kind of dedicated device to, you know, that essentially you can put the relay in and test it that way. So Mike Patelli writes, leaky injector, perhaps he's speaking back to Drive Shaft Drew's. That is a good point too. You could also be losing fuel out of a leaky injector. I would assume if he was losing that much fuel to the point it lost all fuel pressure, I would think that he would have a, you know, pretty severe misfire on startup. Sometimes not having all the information is, you know, it can be a little bit of a problem, but yes, that is a good point. And they also Camaro writes that AES Wave makes a good relay tester. So go over there and to aeswave.com. There is a link on my in the description box of my YouTube videos. I have an affiliate account with AES Wave. So apparently they make one. Have I ever dropped a car off a lift? I have not. I did have a lift brake on me, one of the lift arms break with about 14,000 pounds on it. That was at my dad's shop. That was a lift that was suitable for the vehicle I was working on. And I was underneath it, and the one rear lift arm, this was a brand new lift too. The rear lift arm actually split right down the seam. It cracked and split open, and I didn't notice it at first. I walked back under the car and I see, like, this thing spread apart like an inch. I'm like, holy crap. It was a railroad truck, a high rail truck I was working on. Like I say, the lift was suitable. We were well, within the weight limits. We were like 3,000 pounds, under its rated capacity. But yeah, the rear lift arm broke. And, we sent the company, they want all these pictures and proof. And, I had to weigh the truck because it's got this big high rail gear hanging off the front and rear because it drives down railroad tracks. But, yeah, so I have had one break, but I've never dropped one off the lift. No. Let's see. Oh, have I ever sent a car out with no oil? No, I have not. I have, and I will admit it, I have started a car without an oil filter on it. And that sucks because you got the biggest freaking mess to clean up. And as soon as you hit that key, you know exactly what you did. I'll be out here, get distracted 150 times, finish the service, set it down, fill it up with oil, start it up, watching that oil pressure gauge or light. And it only runs for about 3 or 4 seconds. And you realize, you didn't do the fill, you shut it right back off. And, there's 3 quarts of oil on the ground. It's a mess. So yeah, I have done that before. I've never double filled one. Back when I was just a young rookie mechanic, I did double gasket the O-ring on the oil filter. Of course, that's pretty classic. Let me shut this furnace off. Let's see. D6 writes that she had left the oil cap off a bus once. Oops. Should brake fluid be replaced every few years? That's a good question. That's a hard sale to make to a customer, but absolutely. If you have the means to replace your, brake fluid, by all means, they're being hygroscopic. Definitely gets full of moisture. You can get brake fluid test strips and see where you're at as far as your boil point. So yeah, it's definitely a good maintenance item. Pig mats or speedy dry, I use both. Oh, they said the furnace isn't a distraction. I thought it was. Wow, wait till I'm cold. I'll kick it back on. Thoughts on pre-filling oil filters? That really depends. Elvero, I believe that's how you pronounce your name. Thoughts on pre-filling oil filters? I have nothing against it. Unfortunately, the filter orientation on most vehicles today doesn't allow that. I mean, you have to have the vehicle or the filter that goes on in the vertical position, and yeah, I mean that's the only way. Otherwise you fill it up when you tip it sideways to put it on, you dump it out. When we worked on big trucks, we always filled them, but the filters also held, 2 or 3 quarts each, and there was 2 of them, primary and secondary oil filters. So you would have, 5 or 6 quarts of oil just in the filter alone. So we always pre-filled the filters on those, but they're also always vertically mounted. What's my favorite breakfast? That's Big D. If I eat cereal, I like my Cinnamon Toast Crunch. I like my Lucky Charms. I'm a junk food breakfast guy, Cocoa Puffs, that kind of stuff. Straight up, just pure sugar, get you going. Couple cups of coffee, come here and deal with the public. But typically, waffles, eggs, waffles, bacon is what I'll make in the morning. So that's one of my favorites. Yep, 44 quarts of oil. That's right. And most of your big trucks are, 11 to 12 gallons, depends on what you're working on. Count Chocula. That's right. Oh, the nearest man. Oh man, I can't eat McDonald's for breakfast. That stuff would destroy me. Even though their coffee is only $1. But Krispy Kremes, it's a good thing we don't have Krispy Kremes nearby. That stuff is made from like angels. I swear, they come down and they make them donuts because they are amazing. I have a friend of mine, also a YouTube viewer, that brings me down some Krispy Kremes, and I cannot stop eating those. They bring me a dozen. Like last time, he's like, "You want me to bring 2 dozen?" I'm like, "No way! I'll go in diabetic shock because I just can't stop. Those things are amazing." Burger King, yeah. If I had to pick fast food, I would pick Burger King over Mickey D's, the home of the Whopper. I do love my double Whopper with cheese, no tomatoes, and light everything else. That's how I get it made. And of course, you have to ask them for mustard because they don't put mustard on the double Whopper. Krispy Kreme is not too sweet, tractor wrangler. Krispy Kreme is amazing. They just melt in your mouth. You're just like, you can't stop. I can't stop. They are so freaking amazing. All we have is a Dunkin' Donuts, and I mean their donuts are like 4 days old when you go in there. So, Dunkin'. Oh man, now you guys, I want a Krispy Kreme so bad right now. Love me some Krispy Kreme. Am I diabetic? No, but if I had a Krispy Kreme, I probably would be. uh, Krispy Kreme is crack for cops. It'd be crack for me too. I tell you, I'd be. Oh man, Krispy Kreme. I gotta stop talking about it. Dunkin' Donuts coffee. Yeah, it is one of the few coffees I actually drink with cream and sugar. If I get Dunkin' Donuts coffee, I get the Keith DeFazio special. So that's extra large lane sweet. I've almost got them trained here at my Dunkin' Donuts to give me the Keith special. That's what I tell. It takes a while. I get some funny looks, but whatever. Sugar Smacks. Yeah, I'm with you on the Sugar Smacks. We buy the generic brand, so I think they call them Honey Puffs. My wife's good like that. If I go shopping, I get all the good cereal. How much is a gallon of gas going for? I don't know. I've been driving a Civic. I only stop once a month. This guy Robert, he writes he's got a new process, 263 XHD transfer case pinhole leak and overheated. Replace with aluminum case or rebuild from parts kit. So I assume you probably have the pinhole leak at the oil pump drive, would be my guess. If you ran it out of oil to the point it overheated, I would perhaps, if this transfer case I'm thinking of, I would perhaps at that point get a used unit perhaps, or if you're willing to, tear into that, see if there was any damage. But it can get to the case where you have, if you've ran out of oil, you've overhead it. I mean, if there's, if you start getting into, bushings and, if it ruined the chain, ruined the pump, you start buying a lot of parts and pieces for it, if it ruined the planetaries, you're going to be way over the price of getting a low mileage used one and then just putting the oil pump saver in the case and calling it good. So that would be my opinion on that. Yeah, Mrs. O is the health food junkie. She tries to get me to eat all the veggies and stuff, which I do. I entertain her and do that, but we still eat a lot of stuff like, that's not good for you. Probably shouldn't, but whatever. Do I love my muffins? Of course I love my muffins. I mean, I do like vegetables and stuff, don't get me wrong, but I'd rather have big fat steak and a Krispy Kreme donut. Keith loves his muffins. Yeah, the veggies are what I feed my food. Let's see. Are the kids into motorized toys? They are. They actually got a couple of remote controls for Christmas, a couple four-wheel drive remote controls, which are pretty cool because they're geared quite low, so they have a tremendous amount of power for running off, 4 little AA batteries. So they're pretty fun. And Mrs. O knew that I would be jealous that the kids got some and want to play with them, so she bought me my own. So we have little rock crawling competitions up in our house. Would I eat a burger with Krispy Kreme donuts as the bun? Yes. What kind of grease do you use on muffler bearings and lug nut bearings? Your muffler bearings, you are going to want to use a high temp grease on. Absolutely. Mufflers do tend to get hot, so high temp grease on your muffler bearings and an anti-back out grease on your lug nuts because you don't want them backing off on you. He loves asparagus steamed. I like asparagus cooked on a grill. Makes your pee smell nasty, but it tastes fantastic. What's my favorite beer? Just my beer. If I'm going to drink a beer year round is Yingling. I do like my IPAs. I like my Sam Adams lagers, particularly this time of year when we can get the winter lager. Bud Light? No, not Bud Light. You drink Bud Light to get sober. Coors Light is wee mom's beer. I think he says Coors Light is his mom's beer, perhaps. Do you ride mini bikes and go-karts? I used to have a mini bike. I had a Honda CT70 mini bike, 3-speed. Gave that story a long time ago. First engine I ever rebuilt when I was just a young buck. My favorite wine, beer. I'm not a wino. Mrs. O likes wine. If I drink wine, I have to drink like a Riesling, but not a big wino. I like to go on wine tours, as long as you got a driver. We live right smack in the middle of wine country here. So living in the Finger Lakes region, we have literally hundreds of wineries. So if you want to get hammered on a weekend, rent a limo and go on a wine tour. Let's see. Do I drink hard liquor? I'm not an alcoholic. Don't get me wrong. I do, enjoy beer and other booze. If I'm going to drink hard liquor, I do like my tequila. So, like I said, I'm not a junkie. So don't get me wrong. I'm not like I'm getting pissed drunk every night. See you later, Rob. Have a good night. Oh, Keith's leaving too from New Level. Yeah, we're probably gonna be signing off here soon. We're going on our 2-hour mark, so won't be long. I won't forget the kids. I still got time. I'm monitoring my clock down here. See what Mr. Keith has to say. Let's see. This guy says he recommends the Harbor Freight LED light, just as good as the Astro, but much cheaper. I would have to see it, Bob, to make that decision. I've had my Astro light now for a couple of years, and it has not broke, which, in my opinion, that has really stood the test of time. I've never owned a light in the shop that lasts more than 6 months. So having one that has been, a few years is pretty amazing, in my opinion. So I would have to put the old Harbor Freight to the test before I can make that statement. Perhaps you have, though, but I think that Harbor Freight light you're mentioning is pretty new. What engine does my Jeep has? My Jeep has the big 4-liter in it. KYB or Monroe? Depends. Overall, probably KYB. The Monroe OE Spectra line has been giving me a lot of trouble lately, to the point where I'm going to quit using them. I have not received my YouTube play button yet. No, that question's been asked. What year is my Jeep? It's a 98. Who has the fastest vehicle between all of my siblings? See, my brother drives a Volkswagen Jetta, I don't know, like a 2014, I think, TDI diesel. Of course, I got my Tundra and my Civic, and my other brother drives Cummins. He's got a 3/4 ton Dodge and a Honda Pilot. And then my sister drives a minivan. I don't know. Probably my brother's V-Dub would probably be the fastest as far as top speed. But my Tundra could skid him sideways down the road. So, what year is my Jeep hat? This one's probably. Oh, this is one of my better ones. This one's probably like a couple years old. Oh gosh. Oh, he's got an 83 CJ7. I had an 81 CJ8 Scrambler. Love that thing. Have I seen Vinny lately? I haven't, actually. It gets cold out. Vinny stays home. Usually he scoots around here, checks in on me. Yeah, gray hair. I've got lots of gray hair. Don't worry about that. Do I have a leveling kit on my Tundra? I do not. I don't mind that it sits down a little bit in the front end. But if I ever put a snowplow on it, I will. What do I plow with? I plow with my little Kubota tractor. At home here, the neighbor plows it. He's got a 14-foot pusher. He's got a John Deere backhoe. Gray's better than white. I guess I don't care what color it is. Cool, as long as you have it. Is it snowing in New York? It is not. Do I give a customer discount if they pay in pure cash? I do not. Cash, check, credit card, it's all the same to me. I pay all my taxes and all my money I receive, so I don't. Have I ever installed Timberins? I have. Put a lot of Timberin blocks on vehicles when we install snowplows. Anyhow, it looks like we're at that time. We were at the 7:45 mark. For whatever reason, there's still 1,130 viewers watching, which I don't understand. But I do appreciate it all the same. Appreciate all the super chats you guys have given us and your questions. I'm sorry if I don't have the ability to answer all of them. I try to do my best, but I'm not gonna lie to you and tell you that, you know, I know the answer, or, you know, have some magic crystal ball I can look at and give you the answer. So hopefully I've helped, you know, answer some of your questions and maybe provide a little bit of insight. And that's it. I got to go pick up my children. So we're out of here. Thanks for watching, guys. Thanks for all the comments. Again, thanks for the super chats. Thanks for being awesome subscribers and subscribing. If you haven't and you're watching this, what's stopping you, baby? Click that button, click that bell. Find us where you can find us. And just remember, viewers, if I can do it, you can do it. Thanks for watching.